Greetings, everyone. I'm Dr. Dave Webb, and welcome to the Homerun Leadership Show. Today's webinar, our webcast, our podcast, features two outstanding elementary principals that like to have a lot of fun. They're outstanding principals, and they're going to introduce themselves. I think they were deep in reading of Homerun Leadership, your guide to better, faster team decisions. So there you go. Thanks, Vanna. So Terry and Susie, do you want to introduce yourselves and we'll get started?
Absolutely. No, we do like to have a lot of fun. We like to work hard and we like to have a lot of fun. And so we do refer to this constantly in our practice. And we're going to share that with you today, professionally and personally, how we do that. But before we do, again, I'm Terry Bretoi. I'm the principal at Capoge Education Center in South St. Paul. And Dave and I started working together about 12 years ago. It was in my second year as a principal. And prior to that, I was a fourth grade teacher and an assistant principal in South St. Paul. So I've been there quite a length of time. I started, as I said, as a fourth grade teacher and as a coach. And so part of my development as a leader was kind of old school. And it was kind of came from the day where you kind of told kids to do things and they did it. You kind of told your players to do things and they did it. And things have changed over time. And Dave really helped me realize that there's a different way to decision making that's consensus based, that works better, that works for a longer period of time, that gains ownership from people who are involved in it. And it really transformed who I have become as a leader. And we're just excited to share some stories with you today that show that in our growth.
Great as that. Susie, go ahead. Yeah.
I'm Susie Prather. I'm the principal at O.H. Anderson in Matamidi. It's a 3 through 5 building. I've been in education for 29 years as a first grade teacher, reading teacher, public, private, and I'm starting my 15th year as a principal in Matamidi. I was also in Edina and in Hudson as well. So I have used some of these tips. I've learned them through Terry, and then also Dave was one of our speakers at University of Wisconsin River Falls when we did a principal summer academy. So he taught this to some of our graduates as well. And so this is just a part of who we are in our decision making. And so we're excited to share some of our home run stories with you as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. And it was great to speak to your class, Susie. Thanks for the invite in. In the home run book, I think it was on page, let me get to the exact page I was just on. So
yeah, we may know that, David. I think it's on page
44. We're going to go to page 44 of home run leadership. So there's a chart that you kind of referred to, Terry, about regular leadership and home run leadership being a continuum. Yeah. So regular leadership really is about my way, deciding myself, telling people what to do. The continuum and the shift to home run leadership, and it really is a shift for a lot of, especially young leaders, to make the shift to say, how do we decide together? How do we collaborate and get to a decision together? And oftentimes new leaders get scared, they skip bases, and then they get into trouble. So today you're going to hear a bunch of stories from Terry and Susie about, we've all stepped in it, we've all made mistakes along the way, but home runs that they've hit with students and their staff and beyond. Mm-hmm. So that shift is important, and let's focus on that today. And Terry, you want to kick us off with a student story about running the bases and touching all four?
Absolutely. And before we get to that, we wanted to just share how, leaders many times take personality inventories or leadership surveys and whatnot. And we, oddly enough, are the same. We have the same default, and people call it red or people call it north, right? And that's just kind of how we grew up and early in our careers, who we were. So we're workhorses. We'll go and do, and we'll jump, and we're producers, right? And
you're also deciders, right?
Yeah.
You like to decide, jump in, take action.
Yeah. So early on, we would think, we obviously would gather facts in any situation, whether it's a student situation or system change or something like that. But reactions, we weren't really interested in them. And that we wanted to kind of get moving and go because, the pace of our jobs in administration and in schools, it's fast paced. And we thought early on that the quicker you do things and the more decisions you make, the better off you'll be. And it's rarely true. I said early on in my career that, I would make unilateral decisions. I would make decisions on my own, and then I'd have to back up, right?
Yeah.
And like you said, you'd step in it, and then you'd have to gather a group. And I've said for years, I've not made a unilateral decision on my own in a number of years because you have to go with your group. And this has allowed us to kind of slow down as Reds and slow down as Norths to work with a whole host of other people and to really understand where they're coming from to get to the end. So we do practice it. And at the elementary level with little kids and little minds, they like to have visuals. And so, Dave had given me this years ago and I have it up in my office. And, the baseball analogy is perfect for elementary kids. They get it. So when people talk about IROD, it's listed here, but my kids generally refer to Fred, and they know that F means facts, R is reactions, E is evaluate options, and then we decide and we run the base paths together. So I literally write it up on the board and we jot down everything. Facts, generally this past week, we had a playground situation when two kids come off the playground and they have completely different stories as to what happened out there. So I have to write down their truth or their facts on first base. And we write 2 columns on the board and we have to keep working there, staying at first base until we come up with the story.
Yeah. How great is that? And can I just say what the shift that you've made from regular leadership and the home run leadership, we all have the shift, is you become the pitcher. Mm-hmm. And what you're pitching as a facilitator are the best questions. Mm-hmm. So at first base, we always have to get all the information. So second base, all the reactions, third base, all the options, fourth base, all the decisions. So there's all these different change systems that all call it something different, whether it's IROD or what guts, so what, now what, or Fred or IROD that I try to simplify the science down into. So whatever you call it, you as a leader have to be the pitcher and facilitator of questions to all the students coming in or staff coming in or the angry parent phone call. So way to go.
Yeah. And, kids and adults come in and they jump right to second base right away. They're hot or they're upset about something. And there has to be a space for that. And that's early in our careers what we didn't give space to. And we have to give space to that, right? And so with little minds and little kids, we move to second base then, and we include not only how did that make you feel, but most importantly, how did it make the other person feel? And so you're building in empathy there, and you're starting to hear multiple perspectives. And so people are becoming, I think they feel part of the overall solution is happening right then when you start to empathize with somebody else and hear somebody else's point of view. Cool. So super important. And as I've said, second base is a great place to visit, but you don't want to live there, right? Because you generally are thinking with a different part of your brain that is not really rational sometimes, or it's you're not in the best frame of mind to make decisions or think about a solution. So with little kids and little minds, we go to third base and we just like brainstorm and we put it all up on the board. And it's that what if, what could be from this? Everything from with kids, do I send you home today because you're so unsafe? Or do we make an apology? Or do we put together a presentation for your class that would show what it's like to live respectfully on the playground? We throw it all up there.
Great.
And they start, just that process kind of gets them outside of themselves a little bit, and they start to think about, again, solutions together.
Mhm.
And then we keep talking until what do you want to do? How do we do this together? And Dave, you'd always say with kids, like, how do we make a decision so this will never happen again? Right.
Yeah,
So,
that was one of my favorites is how can we make sure this never happens again? Like
yeah.
what parts of this plan do we need from this list of options to bring into fourth base? So this sticks because you don't want to be here in the office. I don't want you here in the office. Your parents don't want you here in the office. So can we get to all the ideas at third base that you want to bring into fourth that will fix this, that end this today?
Yeah.
Home
Yeah.
run.
And so kids get to choose. And the situation that we had this past week, actually, I had the conversation a week ago with these boys, and I left it up on the board because I was fairly certain we might be back running the base paths again. And sure enough, yesterday we were. And so the things that they had chosen as options, we had to run the base paths again and create a new list. And now we've selected hopefully a new outcome, right? So you don't just run it once. You're in a baseball game, you run the base paths many times, and you keep doing it until you get the outcome that works for everybody. And so that is like a weekly occurrence in an elementary school. And I do have it visible, and I make it visible for kids, so they're running it with me.
That's awesome, Terry. And Susie, do you want to jump in with an example from your elementary as well?
Definitely. I run the base paths daily at a 3-5 building. You can imagine what comes after the playground, some of the similar situations. But I'm going to share with you just a story, what I've done with a whole class. We use restorative circles at OH Anderson to kind of help and fix problems, but we use the base paths with that. So at OH Anderson, sometimes students aren't as respectful as we would like to our guest teachers. And the guest teachers writes a report to the teacher, and it just didn't look like a very successful day. So we have often run circles with classes as a whole classroom community during morning meeting, and we have the talking piece. And the first round, we talk about what happened with that guest teacher. So every student's kind of giving their facts and their stories on round one. Round two is talking about how it made us feel. And I think this is the most important piece because we're hearing every student's voice about, if so-and-so was being disrespectful or not following our schedule. How did it make someone else feel that was like kind of frustrated, not getting things done? So you got to hear all the perspectives of kids saying, how is this making us feel when we wasted how much time with this guest teacher? I felt like they were being disrespectful to them and they would never have treated their teacher that way. So it's very important to really get everyone's feelings and to have every student listen to every perspective around the circle.
Wow.
Then the third round is we talk about what are we going to do to fix it? And that's the part that I'm, like you said, kind of the pitcher, but I'm also the recorder of getting everyone's ideas as kids come up with solutions. And it's their voice that's really coming alive about what are they going to do to fix it. It's not my job to fix it. It's what are we going to do? And we share all of those options at that time. And it's important, again, to get different perspectives. And we also see kind of the trend in the room because kids will say, I agree with Johnny. We do need to be respectful, treat him like a guest in our house. I believe we need to be better listeners, those pieces as well.
And then, so what a gift. Keep going to fourth. Yeah.
Yeah. And then kind of our fourth is I just read off all of the solutions. What are we going to do? Often it's the kids that maybe weren't respectful to that guest teacher, writing apology notes to them. And then it's really talking about what is our plan for the next guest teacher. And we make it very visible when a guest teacher's in our classroom. These are the things we're going to do so that that guest teacher has it, the classroom teacher has it, and everyone is on the same page. So that restorative circle really follows each base, but allows every student to have a voice. And really hear everyone's perspective in the situation as well.
Wow. So the gift that you just gave to principals across the country about running a restorative circle, because every principal deals with a sub or a guest teacher from the day before that didn't go well. And so you gave a strategy to just say, hey, just touch every base, ask 4 questions. So change, decision-making, problem solving, and restorative practices all follow science of 4. There's 4 science of 4 that if you know IROD, you follow the 4 steps, you're way ahead as a principal. And then you bring the class with you in solving their problem the old school principal would have come in, yelled at the class, and told them never to do it again, well, then they might do it again. This way, students take ownership, hear the problem, come up with a solution, and they develop the plan and hold each other accountable the next time the guest teacher is there. Huge home run. I like to call when you get 30 kids in a room and they come up with their own plan, huge grand slam. So way to go.
Thanks.
So you both have stories of really complex home runs where you have large elementary schools, large staff, where you have to round the bases with a large team of people. Oftentimes, businesses across America, small businesses are the largest numbered business in the country, but there's a number of mid-sized businesses that are more like the size of your elementary, where you have 80 to 100 people sometimes as adults in the building. So, Terry, do you want to start out with a complex home run example, a story that you might like to share, or you just rounded the bases, were cognizant of it, how it played out, and just share the story?
Yeah. So it was roughly 10 years ago in which we knew that student behavior was we were at a tipping point, that we had a lot of suspensions. We had a lot of kids who were, defiant or disrespectful, and it was overwhelming for staff. And so we had, PBIS was just kind of getting up and going. And we
Tell
were
us what PBIS is as you're starting.
Positive behavioral interventions and supports. Basically, they're systems school-wide that help kids and staff get on the same page as it comes to kind of regarding building management. And so you're all talking the same talk. You all have the same expectations. You have common methods as to how we manage kids and how we let them manage themselves, hopefully in the end. And so we felt like we needed to be on the same page. And so I had asked a group of staff to go to kind of an exploratory PBIS informational session. And they went. I did not even go. I sent a group of people and an assistant principal, and they went and they listened and they heard everything that PBIS can do for you. And they came back and they got their base one. They got all the facts that they could.
Great.
And they came back and we met together, and we were at base two. And base two, the reactions that we had was that we were not ready for that. It was, we have some things in place right now that seem to replicate what PBIS can do for you. So why don't we just do this on our own? Well, 2 more years of student behavior that we felt was out of control, and suspensions that were out of control as well. 2 years later, we sent back another group, and they came back resoundingly and said, yes, we need something to get everybody on the same page here. And so we are now in year 8 of PBIS, and our suspensions over that period of time just plummeted. So we felt like we needed a tiered system of support for all of our kids that now we're tweaking. So we are going back to all of the elements of PBIS, from the behavior matrix to the flow chart that is minor and major behaviors, to the referral forms that teachers fill out, to proactive strategies that we need to teach all staff on how to support kids who come from trauma or have so many barriers outside of their life that they walk through the doors with every day. And we have, I think, the most regulated building we've ever had at this moment in time. And Dave, and you and I were just talking about just the start of the school year. And I just feel like I use that word regulated, that kids, I think, are more regulated right now than they have been in my small pocket of the world. Yeah. But I also think that they, because we've run the base paths with not only the overall system, PBIS, but the smaller elements of it, we run the base paths for every piece of it. Yeah. And so that was a major system change that can't happen in a year. It does, when they say 3 to 5 years, it takes 5 years to get there. And I feel like we're there, and without running that process over and over on a large scale and a small scale, we wouldn't have gotten there.
Right.
So I'm really proud of the fact that we can support our kids in a better way together than we ever were before 10 years ago.
And can I just compliment you on a couple of things, just kind of retracing the story? So you send a team to PBIS training. They come back. They're a little concerned, second base, but they share out with staff what they learn, what they know. Staff kind of join in that concern. And when you look at options, do you move ahead or do you table it for right now? You were at third base, but there was enough negative to know that it was a warning signal to not force it through, not decide for the school, not cross home plate alone as a principal telling them, you have to do this. You allowed it to be tabled for a year or two until they went to the training again when the staff was more ready. They came back, they shared. You got the options in front of your staff. Do we go now or do we not implement PBIS? And you have to get a certain percentage, like the majority, the will of the group, the will of the staff has to approve this in order for the state to give you grant money. So you waited until you had the majority, you moved with your school, and then they supported it and implemented it well. So huge home run there, but you avoided a strikeout, which is a sign of another great sign of a home run leader, is you don't always have to touch home plate. You always have to be on the base path, managing around the base path. Some home runs can be 3 to 5 years in length. If you look at things like planning for construction projects, you're always saying, okay, 5 years from now, we might need to do roofs here and boilers here and system things. So you just had a couple year home run, but you got there. And then it is 5 years to build a really great PBIS system. And you have all the data to show. So way to go. So Susie, you have a pretty incredible staff, kind of a complex staff story too. Do you walk us around the base path with your example?
Definitely. As Terry said, as Reds, we are systems thinkers. So this really brings me kind of that format to bring the staff through decision making. And so I'm going to start with my story. I started as a principal at my new building in 2018, 19 school year. So when I come into a new school, I always have breakfast circles where we talk about what's going well, what are some challenges, and what supports do you need? And I look at what are those small little home runs I can make, and then what are the larger pieces as well. And as a new principal, you're always listening and learning and seeing where are some improvements to be made, and then making decisions on where are we going to go first, where are we going to get the biggest kind of bang for our buck.
And I just have you restate those 3 simple questions. You blew past them pretty quickly. There's a lot of first-year principals out there that would love to have those 3 questions to know how to get to third base, just coming in the building new this year to gather information so they can help their staff get quicker home runs. Just say those 3 again.
So the first one is, what are the successes or things you're most proud of your school? Because those are the things that we want to keep and, really just strengthen what we're doing. What are some challenges you're facing so that we know what are those common challenges? And then what support do you need from me as a leader? And we have our discussions over bagels and coffee, and that helps me to gather a lot of information in the beginning as a new leader.
Wow, that's golden. So way to go. That wasn't even part of the story. So you gave us an extra bonus there. So let's get into the story.
Yeah. So one of the things that my elementary school, it's a 3 through 5 building. So it's kind of different. There's a K2 building, 3, 5, and then they moved to middle and high school. And one of the things that when we came to the school and what teachers had said is relationships weren't as strong student to student, teacher to teacher. And one of the things that I learned is we were departmentalizing in grades 4 and 5. So it looked like a middle school concept. So kids went to literacy for 50 minutes, math for 50 minutes, science, social studies for 50 minutes, all had different classrooms, never had that home base feeling of this is my classroom community. Teachers were frustrated because it was hard to communicate, like if you're doing teamings for kids at all different areas. Parents had a hard time with communication. So we heard kind of all these kind of problems around the way that we did some of our classroom groupings. Teachers were loving that model because I was an expert in reading or I was an expert in math, and I could just spend all my energy and really perfecting kind of that content area that I was teaching about. But one of the things that we did is we started something called an inquiry into classroom groupings. And you can see I use the base pads there. The visuals are very important to me. But we had meetings set aside going each base. So at first base, we really talked about what were the facts, what was the data, what were the test scores we were seeing. We were seeing super high scores in science, super low in math and reading if you're only spending 50 minutes with that. Right. Behavior was not strong. We had anecdotal data from parent surveys and from teacher surveys that we had. So we gathered all those facts together and really spent some time as a staff just adding to that list of facts. So we all knew where we were, what's our current reality here at OH Anderson. Then on first base, we also did some learning, because one of the things that when you're making changes and decision, we always don't know what we don't know. So we did an inquiry process. We spent probably 2 more meetings, and these meetings were with people that were interested in this. It wasn't just the instructional leadership team. It was anyone that was interested in this process. So it was interesting. The first meeting was kind of smaller, but when people heard about it, more people joined into this process. So we did some learning. And then base 2, we talked a lot about feelings. And I love this process because it really separates facts from feelings. And as a red, it is important to honor both, but to really keep that separate, because a lot of times those merge and meld into each other and the feelings become facts in some people's minds. But I think it's important to really share. So we had a separate meeting talking about feelings. You know, there was fear, a lot of fear from teachers that how could I ever teach literacy and math and science and social studies and do it well and do justice to it. There were other strong facts. So our third grade teachers were homeroom based, like our kids need that classroom community. So it was an awesome way to get feelings from all perspectives at base 2. Then we went to third base, and I tell you, we probably had 12 options or 15 options of how we could do and make some changes for groupings and scheduling. And we had them posted all around the library with the strengths and what were like some concerns that we might see. And so as a team, we had all of those posted. It was great because teams were coming with variations. So there'd be a 6B, a 6C, variation to that. But as a staff, we were the ones developing what were our solutions to really help our kids to be connected. We had something called guardrails, is what we called. These were our kind of criteria for success, or what you might say that we need to have our tights. And we went around and kind of prioritized and eliminated things that didn't fit our guardrails. And we came up with, I think, 3 options at the end. And this small committee brought it out to our larger staff. And we had a staff meeting and we explained what are our solutions, what are the pros and cons and questions, and then let them give input. I call that the accordion piece as a leader. Oftentimes you have a small group, bring it out to the big group, bring it back to the small group for refinement piece of that. And I'll say just, the feelings, once you brought it out to the large group, feelings came back. So we had to go back to second base about what were the feelings and the fears. And I always look at it as these are valid feelings and fears, but what can we do to support you? What are those solutions that we can move forward with? And I think if you come with that supportive stance, any big change, people can make it through when you're really being clear about what is the change, what is the purpose, and then giving that support piece with it as well. So we came up with I'm so excited. Third grade is homeroom based. Fourth and fifth grade, we have a combo of half the grade is homeroom based. The other half of the grade is something called partner based. So if Terry and I were partners, he might be the math partner. I would be the literacy. So he would have his homeroom and do morning meeting, win time, everything, math with his class. I would do all of the same with my class. And then just for math and literacy, we'd switch classes. So we could still be that expert in our topical area, but still have that classroom community. And actually it has grown through COVID as now teachers, like during WIN, our two team of teachers, if we were the team, we would be working and using assessments like really like in time during WIN time. So if he had some kids that were struggling in fractions, and they would be from both classes, he would have a small group for that week in WIN, really using those formative assessments to support kids. And I could do the same for literacy. So this partnership has really grown, and teachers have really honored and valued kind of that piece. And I've given that choice because we said those were our best two models, our decision. How are we going to make that work? And teachers' voices came into it. And we've just really evolved through the pandemic and really better. We've done better for our kids. And I'm just proud of that change at OH Anderson.
Yes, so you should be, because you stayed right on the base path. You stayed right on the science-based steps to help your staff solve their own challenge, their own problem, just like you did with the restorative circle with the guest teacher situation. You stayed right on the base path, right on the science. And when you stay on the science, then you don't get taken out as a leader. People don't try to clip your legs off because they're just trying to solve the problem of the building. So I'm going to go back to one moment there, which I thought was brilliant again. Oftentimes, third base is the hardest base for leaders to get from the ideas that you have to the home run. We're trained oftentimes to run a SWOT analysis. So strength, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. So strengths is first base, weaknesses is second base, opportunities is third, and threats takes you back to second base. So we're trained with SWOT, and it only gets you to third base. So there's a challenge there if you only run a SWOT analysis. So you got your staff to third base, and you got the options visible. So many people are visual learners. So getting them up on the wall was critical. Allowing then for pros and cons of options while allowing for additional options. So at the end of every base, you have to ask anything else, any additional information, any additional reactions, any additional options. So you made space for additional options and the pros and cons to each new option. So you get up to 13 options, and like you said, you might have 6C as you get variations on the theme. And then you might dismiss your staff while you're there, and then get that small group huddle that can meet for another hour or two to say, we're going to bring you back a narrowed set of, instead of 13, our best 3. And you did that, and then got the staff input again. You're going back to pros and cons, which is a lot of first and second base still, once you're in that vetting stage at third base. And eventually you get to 1 that the staff can support with the will of the school. It doesn't mean that every teacher is going to agree. It's the majority of your teachers are going to agree, and you move forward with that will of the group. So a huge home run again. Way to go, Susie.
Thank you.
I'm going to put you to the test now. Both elementary principals. You ever use it at home? When you run the bases, when Carrie's driving you nuts, Susie, and say, hey, can I just bring you back to first base here? And you just bought a pair of golf clubs, and I want to know why.
He's actually good at bringing me back.
It's the reverse, actually. But we can't escape it, Dave, because we are life partners and we have PLC walks after work every day. I feel like the base paths are outside of our house, and we just walk to each base. But we do use it constantly, and we were thinking a lot about this personally, because anything professionally is much easier to do sometimes than personally, right? And so that reaction for Reds is there, obviously. So professionally, we say it's a nice place to visit, but not stay there. But sometimes personally, we stay there a little bit more than we should.
And he always says, you're on second base, Susie.
Yes,
we got to get back to first base, because
Okay.
I'm a feelings person at home, not as much at work.
Yes. So, but we, after much thought on this, there's 3 boys who had to select a college. And we actually ran the base paths with each kid in their college selection. So as educators, sometimes everything's got to be done on paper, right? So we have a chart or a spreadsheet for everything in our life. And that was the start of First Base for us. My youngest, we went to 4 or 5 college visits, and that's what you're doing. You're gathering all the information you can. And as soon as a kid steps on campus, you're gauging his reaction to, or her reaction to, what the feelings are when you're there. Right. And then you leave and you go to another college, and there's the options. Right.
Yeah.
And then you have to start to do what Susie had mentioned about kind of accordion, right? You bring it out to the whole group, and then you make decisions and you narrow your search. And we did that with all 3 kids, and we ran through it several times at each college until they selected the one that was best for them. So without even kind of naming it at that time, that's what we were doing with running the base paths with each kid, and it was a home run in each case. So and then there's our little talks every day, right? but we're not going to go there. This is a family show.
Yeah, we don't have time for that. Right?
We don't have time for that.
But I think that process with the kids, kind of finding their colleges, I think it was helpful for them, because as a 18-year-old, kids don't know exactly what they want to be when they grow up. They don't know, their feelings to be a part. But we even talked about radius, big and little schools, and all of that. And I think, just even in that strengths and what are the questions or concerns that we have, that's when you have those discussions about money, the real things, what that means, because as an 18-year-old, they don't know that. So I think it's important as adults that you have a process to guide kids through that decision making, so that they feel like they are making the best decision for them. And I think all 3 of the boys have found their place, and it helped a lot. But we do use this in everything we do. Building a pool in the backyard, purchases, trips we're going to go on, disagreements about different things. We use that. But he is good at bringing me back to the facts, because sometimes I get into the feelings with others. But it is a helpful process for us to use.
And Dave, your first story, I think you shared with us when you introduced the base paths, was just about selecting what's for dinner.
Right.
At home.
Right. And I go back to when I was a first-year teacher. Our superintendent shared a story that they did a study of national merit scholars. So there's like thousands of national merit scholars every year across the country. So some guy did a research and project and tried to find what traits are important for getting your kid to be a National Merit Scholar. And they sliced it every which way. And the only thing that they could find is that the families ate dinner together. Mm-hmm. And so what happens at dinner? So first you have to decide what's for dinner. So that's a fight. Mm-hmm. You have to work through that conflict every night to figure out what's for dinner. But once you're at dinner, look at all the restorative practice. Look at all the problem solving that happens when you're around that dinner table. So I like to use that example, but it's really important that families do their best to try to eat dinner or connect with their kid each day to help your kid problem solving. It's so important for mental health. What you're doing with your own family and what I'm doing with mine is just to make sure that you're always problem solving with your kids, running the bases. Just go IROD, information, reactions, options, decision. You're the pitcher of the questions, and you go as slow as you need to go to help your kids problem solve. So way to go, you guys. It was just great to have you on today. What a pleasure. You helped hundreds of principals across the country with today's show. As a special gift, I have developed a 21 video course that goes with the 21 chapters of my Homerun leadership book. So I'd like to give you, if you want to stay on the air, I'll give you a free code afterward that you can log right into and use that.
Great.
But is there anything else you'd like to share before we sign off today?
Well, I just, I have to personally thank you, Dave, because you came in as superintendent in my second year, and you really did change my trajectory as a leader. So thanks. I just appreciate you so much. And I just feel blessed that you were a mentor of mine for, so many years, and how this particular process was shared here too, and is living and breathing in another school as well. And I just can't thank you enough for your guidance and your leadership over the years, and it's really made an impact in so many areas. So appreciate you and what the gift that you've given to us.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you. And you're both outstanding leaders, and you're both making your district stronger. I've now retired from the district where Terry and I work together. Terry continues to do great things. Susie, you do as well. So I always want to remind people that if you want to go great places, keep running the bases. So thanks for being on today's show, and have a great week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Back to our
Okay.
reading.